Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast, or it's also known these days as Where's Fab? Week number 3 with our co-host Fab, who is still gallivanting somewhere in Italy. I believe he's now in Napoli.
At some point, you lose your co-host duties, man, after 5 weeks or so. So
yeah, this is
Fab,
hopefully he's scheduled to be back next week, folks. So we'll keep
TBD.
you in touch with that. It's TBD for now. But the show must go on, as the saying goes. We've been previewing our divisional fantasy football preview. So we previously have done the AFC East, the AFC North, and last week we did the NFC East. So this week we will be going with the NFC North. So pretty loaded fantasy implications on this one. But before we start, guys, just like always, please follow us on all the social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X. And listen to us wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Amazon, also on YouTube. So we're all over the place. Be sure to check us out. So we'll dive right in, as I mentioned, with the NFC North. We'll start
Let's
off
go.
with the Detroit Lions. So few things changed with Detroit. So last year they actually finished 15-2. They had the number 1 seed, but as everyone knows, they could have gone from number 1 all the way down to number 5 in that last game. That's how crazy the NFC North was last year. They were number 1 in scoring offense, so they definitely put up a lot of points and had a lot of 30 plus scoring games. So that means lots and lots of fantasy points.
They ran up the score a lot.
They did, and they weren't shy about it, and
No,
they didn't care.
nope.
They made a statement last year, and definitely statement was seen for sure. So one of the big changes, obviously, is their OC Ben Johnson goes to the Chicago Bears, who we'll be talking about shortly. John Morton is now the new OC, and another big highlight from last year, rookie Jameer Gibbs, almost 2,000 scrimmage yards and 20 total TDs. So huge numbers from the rookie. Some noteworthy changes to take a look at real quick. There was Frank Ragnow, offensive line. I believe it was the center, if I'm not mistaken, right, who retired. So we'll see what happens there. Kevin Zietler left in free agency, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Penei Sewell, huge name, starts on the pup list for camp. So that's the physically unable to perform. So right off the bat, the offensive line has taken a little hit, and it's going to be quite different from what it was last year. They did draft, moved up to pick number 70, traded up to draft one of my favorites, wide receiver Isaac Tesla. He loves saying that name. I hope I pick him in fantasy this year, Mr. Isaac Tesla. Could be a
Just change your
sleeper.
fantasy name to him.
Yeah, I definitely probably will. Could be a sleeper, someone to look out for, and obviously also Dominic Lovett and tight end Kenny Yeboah.
Your boy.
Yeboah. Sounds like your boy. As well, like always, we'll go through all the position groups and give you some analysis here, and either beware or buy high on the following. So we'll start at QB. Jared Goff current ADP is QB 15. But I think something to beware about going into this year, as we mentioned, new OC, and now the O line is kind of remake O line. So I want to hear your thoughts, Raj. I believe you also had Jared Goff last year as well, right? So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on Jared Goff for
I
this
had
year.
Jared Goff the year before. I think Nick had Jared Goff in Bush League last year. I had him the year before when we faced each other in
Mm,
the finals. I look back at Goff's 2021. That was the year just before he had Ben Johnson as OC. He finished QB 24 in fantasy. That was basically, I believe, his first or second year in Detroit. And then once Ben Johnson got there in 2022, That's where he jumped into the top 10. He was QB9. That was starting to see the ascension of the Lions, right? Of course, that comes with Amon-Ra St. Brown. That comes with Jameer Gibbs being drafted. That comes with them adding David Montgomery in terms of, Goff's ascension as, let's be real, a top 10 quarterback. I think there's some cause for concern, as you said, not just with the offensive line, but how are they going to perform? Are they going to be as aggressive as they were with Ben Johnson now without him? And what I've been reading about with the Lions is that they're probably trying to go back maybe more towards the roots in terms of a bit more smash mouth football. If you saw the playoff game against Washington, they should have ran Gibbs 30, 35, 40 times. He was gashing the Commanders and they kept throwing. So I think they're going to take a step back in terms of how much they want to gun and throw the ball this year. And I think they're going to rely even more so on Gibbs. But I think QB 15 is very fair for a guy like Goff, who, he doesn't have the rushing upside. And again, you would just have to factor in that the Johnson loss, I think it's gonna have an impact. I just don't see how you don't you don't bring him down a few notches just because of that. And then I think it's a first time OC. John Morton he was an OC before, but it's a new regime. He was with the team 3-4 years ago, but that was when again Goff was just starting his ascension. So I definitely would be aware with Goff this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at OC. Is he going to kind of keep, some of the same stuff that Ben Johnson is? I would imagine. He might want to keep some of the stuff in there that worked really well and that Goff kind of liked and um, was
The crossing routes, the stuff to Gibbs, like how they use Amon-Ra St. Brown in the short game.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll get into that in the running back
Yeah.
portion of it. But I mean, I have to imagine that he's going to kind of try to keep some similarities, but also as a first time OC, you kind of want to, carve up your own little niche and kind of make it your own and get kind of that obviously when we talk about OCs and defensive coordinators, you don't want to be an OC and a defensive coordinator your whole life. You're striving for that head coach. So maybe he's going to want to, do something to kind of move the needles and show
So,
some stuff as well, right?
so the thing with John Morton actually is that he was the passing game coordinator for the Broncos last year. He's actually he was the offense coordinator for the Jets in 2017, but he's a 55-year-old OC. So like one of some of the things I've read or listened to in podcasts is that because Dan Campbell is like the CEO type coach, right? He's the guy like similar to Mike Tomlin. He needs to pair himself with an OC that isn't going to be looking for the next job all the time. He's not an offensive guru, so he's going to have to tether himself to an offensive coordinator that could always be there. So this guy, depending on how he does, he could be the offensive coordinator there for a while, but I don't think he'll ever be like a hot shot commodity
Head coach.
as a head coach. So I think what one and maybe the last thing I'll say on my front in terms of this is I just don't see them doing the weird stuff that they were doing with Ben Johnson, like the fake fumbles and the fake interceptions. I think I think that's really cool in theory, but like it didn't get the Lions anywhere at the end of the day, right? Like
True.
they choked. They choked in the first round. Washington was a buzzsaw team. They were fantastic. But again, they choked. And a lot of Detroit fans are not super mad that Ben Johnson left because again, they felt that they should have ran more smash mouth football with the Detroit Lions. And that's where I think you're gonna see a bit of a dip with Goff this year.
Right. No, I look, you've said all the right things there. I think I tend to agree with you. So we'll move along to
Yeah.
the running backs. So obviously we spoke about it earlier in Jameer Gibbs. He's currently going as running back 2. So he averaged almost 19 points per game with Montgomery in the lineup and 32.6 without him, which is staggering. You did mention new OC and new, ways of like I said, doing stuff his own way. He's being split out more wide in camp. So They are seeing that he is obviously great with the ball in hand,
Yeah.
so trying to find different ways to get him the ball in his hands is definitely great. And then you have David, excuse me, Montgomery, RB21. Obviously has a heavy red zone role, and he probably has a best ball flex value, I would say, for Montgomery. But what do you think? What are we looking at, or what are you saying with the backfield here?
I love Jameer Gibbs. He's I think you agree with me. He's RB1 in my opinion. I think he's in for a monster year. I think the production that he had without Montgomery, the load that he carried at the end of the season is a huge, huge aspect in terms of why I see him as the number one running back, and also his pass catching ability as well. And again, the fact that I think they're going to take a little bit less off of Jared Goff's plate. So regardless of Montgomery, I think he's there just to keep Gibbs fresh. I love Gibbs as the whether RB1 or RB2 in fantasy this year, and I think David Montgomery still has standalone value, as you said, flex. He's been utilized as an RB2 and with a lot of other teams. I think he has really good standalone value as well. But I think this is a backfield to own in any case.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Definitely with the obviously Jameer Gibbs as the RB1 this season. I know if Fab were here, he would interject with that. Excuse me, and I know he has high hopes on Bijan Robinson, but no, definitely. And honestly, like you said, Montgomery has standalone value, right? So if you're getting him even as your RB2, you're not even like too worried. Maybe you have that little bit of injury concern. I know he's been injured, a few games here and there the last couple of years. So maybe that's the concern for you. Definitely love him more as a flex, but I don't think I would. I don't think I would be crying too much if I did have him as my RB2 because, like you said, I think they're going to be more gritty, more running the ball, take more off Goff, and
Yeah, and I think just quickly, like I think most people are gonna still probably pick Saquon Barkley as their RB1. I think quickly the case for me, Gibbs versus Bijan is just there's just more proof of concept of Gibbs being a real bona fide RB1, and I trust the infrastructure that he has more than the infrastructure that Bijan Robinson has.
I definitely agree. And it's harder for a running back to especially also Saquon Barkley dealt with injuries as well throughout his career, so a little bit harder for an RB to repeat, but definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Now we'll look quickly at the wide receivers. So you obviously have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is your locked and loaded WR1 over there, WR6 in the rankings. You have Jamison Williams as well, WR30. And we also mentioned the rookie sleeper Isaac Tesla, 6'4", 215. Like I don't think it's going to be hard for him to surpass Tim Patrick pretty quickly on the depth chart. I know that the Lions kind of liked him last year. Towards the
Yeah.
end, he was hitting. He had a couple of. I know he had a 2 touchdown game. I think that was on Thanksgiving, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yes.
no, I think as the season progresses, he could definitely carve up a role. But what do you think about these wide receivers?
I mean, Amon Ra is the gold standard. A little bit of a dip year over year. 2023, he had 330 fantasy points. He went to 316. Again, very small dip, just from a yards perspective, but he increased in touchdowns. So I'm I'm not the biggest Amon Ra fan. I don't know. It's just stylistically the death by a thousand cuts. It's just not as fun to watch as the Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. Or even a Puka Nakua. But he is a bona fide WR1. He will continue to be a bona fide WR1. Penciling him as WR6, which is right now the consensus ranking. He's actually after Malik Neighbor. And the Malik Neighbor seems to be shooting up. I like him above like the Nico Collins, the Brian Thomas Juniors. He's in that tier one stretch, right? And then if we look at Jameson Williams, I think he had that kind of breakout last year. There's been a lot of training camp videos. There's been a lot of talk about him this year. Can he keep up the consistency? Can he be more than just a deep threat? I still very much like him again, and I have no problem with him at WR 30. He's within the George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Travis Hunter range. That's like a perfect number for him. I like he's going after or ranked after Chris Olave and even Ted McMillan, which I am not a fan of. I
Which one,
much
Chris Olave or McMillan?
I think both. I would much prefer JMO over Ted McMillan or even Chris Olave, especially Olave with absolutely no QB there,
Yeah,
and it's
Olave
not
is
looking good
tough.
from a train camp
Yeah.
perspective. And McMillan is still rookie.
Yeah, he's been actually looking good in camp. I know we take these camp hype ups with a grain of salt at times, but look, I tend to agree. But the only thing is, like you said, with the new OC, what's it going to look like? Are they going to
Yeah,
run the ball more? Does it bring down Amon-Ra a little bit? Does he come a little bit more? Does he flirt with that end of top 10 numbers rather than, 5 or 6? That's what you got to be careful with when drafting him, I would say, is just beware of the overdraft on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just knowing that there's a new OC and kind of new regime heading into
and
Detroit.
it's such a good point because Ben Johnson schemed the heck out of getting guys open. I will be curious to see. This will be the true test of how good Amon Ra is without Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely agree. If we move into the tight ends, obviously you have Sam LaPorta. Um, as a rookie, he kind of dominated. We thought he was going to be, the next best thing at the tight end position, and then last year kind of struggled, especially early on. I think when did he score his first touchdown last
Oh, it was
year?
a while.
It
It
took
was a
Yeah,
while.
it took a while. He was drafted. He was sorry. He was uh, dropped in a lot of fantasy leagues at a certain
Yes,
point because they just got fed up. And then towards the end of the year, he kind of came back and kind of looked like the Sam Laporta of his rookie season. Because in his rookie season,
still finished tight end 6.
yeah, because down the stretch he had some really, really solid games. But I mean, look, rookie year, 86 catches, almost 900 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like everyone thought this was going to be really, really the next tight end to take over until Brock Bowers entered the league last year. But what are you looking at in terms of Sam Laporta right now, rated tight end 5?
This is more along the lines of his value. I think tight end 5. I think he was way overrated last year. And I think this makes a lot of sense where he's going. Where he's after the Brock Bowers, he's after Trey McBride, he's after George Kittle, TJ Hockenson as well. Um, I would take Sam Laporta. I'm not a big fan of taking tight ends that high personally. I would rather wait until the eighth or even ninth round where you could still get a really solid tight end. But this makes a ton of sense for Sam Laporta. I think he'll have a bounce back year. I think they're again with more of the maybe going a bit more smash mouth, a little less high octane offense. I think it's an opportunity for Sam Laporta to come back. And again, the fact that he, as you mentioned it, finished strong and still ended up being tight end 6 with 70 catches, 7 TDs. I think it bodes well for the start of his 2025 campaign.
Yep. That was perfectly put, I think. Look, they look good. There's just that little question mark to see what that OC looks like. I don't see a um, you know, 15-2 like season this year. I think last year was magical, and I think the stars aligned quite a bit for them. I do see them missing the playoffs, but sorry, making the playoffs, should I say? But somewhere along the lines of maybe an 11-6 finish, 10-7 finish
Yeah,
type deal. So that'll do it with the for the Lions. We'll now go into the Green Bay Packers, where made a couple splash moves at the draft. They were sixth in rushing yards per game with their new toy, Josh Jacobs, your boy. Also
love Josh
14th
Jacobs.
in passing yards per game. I know Jordan Love missed some time with injuries. His stats were a little bit down from the year before, and it just seems like the team was there was always someone injured. There was always someone who had to step up who didn't. It was very disappointing. And if it wasn't one wide receiver who was hurt, it was the next wide
Yeah.
receiver. And it was just kind of like a merry-go-round kind of season. So what did they do? Well, they did one thing they haven't done in forever or ever. Drafted a wide receiver, Matthew Golden, who I know you're really high on, in the first round, and then they followed that up with Savion Williams in round 3 as well. Also signed McCole Hardman later on in the year to bolster up that wide receiver room. And as we know, Christian Watson tore his ACL, so he's going to be missing this season. Although I didn't really have much high hopes for him. But if we start with the QB position, we have Jordan Love entering year 3, I believe, as a starter. So right now, rated as QB 17, I think he is being pegged as a potential bust by some analysts at the moment. But kind of want to hear your thoughts on Jordan Love for the upcoming 2025 season.
The quality, the looseness of his play really showed, whereas that looseness in play and a carelessness, quote unquote, was actually a positive aspect for him in 2023, where I think he finished like in the top 6 in QBs. So he really needs to step up in terms of quality, and just he needs to reduce the turnover play, he needs to stay healthy, and he needs to keep just be more consistent. So the fall is really interesting, where if he's going QB 17, and it's interesting how a lot of the NFC North QBs are all kind of nestled in the same bucket, but he's going in the kind of Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, JJ McCarthy realm, which if you have a chance to take him, it's, the reward is potentially high, but he could also just have another mediocre season like he just had, right? So we're also going to kind of see who is the true Jordan Love in the upcoming season. We're going to talk about the weapons afterwards, but there's still a lot of inconsistency with it, right? And you mentioned it, Christian Watson, torn ACL. They're going to start a rookie wide receiver. There's Reed. There's also Dobbs and Wicks. Again, we'll talk about them, but lack of consistency on that front. So I also think there's an opportunity for them to rely more on the running game, which he needs a little bit of help. I think Love, in terms of his game, he just can't be firing it like he was last year, because it just didn't come to fruition.
I think that's what it is. I think I agree with you there. I think towards the end, I'll just add a little bit. That's what it. I think that's what it comes down to, is that he's not a QB that could do it on his own. He's not a QB that I feel, you know, 2-minute drill, playoff time. Like I just feel he's lacking that kind of it factor, if we could put it that way. I feel like he's very good QB. Will have a fairly good career, but I think that's what's missing. It's just that kind of it factor and kind of like putting the game on his shoulders.
It's being clutch because the talent is there,
Clutch,
right? Like
perfect,
you see
exactly.
him, like, not last year but 2 years ago, he was bouncing back foot throws, like he looked like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, like. But then last year, whether it was defenses that caught on to him, or it was the injuries, or it was the pressure, he just was not good. Whether it was under pressure, and he doesn't offer much rushing upside either, right? So
Well, look, I was going
go
to
for
say
it.
it's the classic year 2
Yeah,
as a starter, and teams just have more tape. Yes, he got hurt in Brazil first game of the year. So that obviously probably had something to do with the rest of his season, should I say? But again, it's really that year 2 when defensive coordinators have more tape on you and can take a whole summer and study it and scheme you. So it's tough. So this is like I feel like it's a very important year because they did sign him to that massive contract. So I think
yes,
it's going to be very important. Um, but if we turn our heads to now, as we mentioned, him needing more help at the running back position. You've got, as I mentioned earlier, your boy Josh Jacobs, currently
what a season.
RB9. What a amazing first season with the Packers. I don't. I think I know we had him pegged to have a really good season, but this was something that I don't think anyone could have predicted in terms of his production. Over 300 touches last year and a heavy, heavy, heavy snap share. So, I mean, Is
And
he
to think
someone?
people thought he was sorry, but people thought he was washed after the first game, after the first few
Yeah, because
games.
of that last injury-riddled season with the
Yeah,
Raiders, right? Oh yeah, and he obviously didn't have a first good first game. Yes, you're right. Um, but I mean, I believe you're still high on Jacobs, and this offense does run through him.
I'm incredibly high on him, and it's crazy. He's only 27 years old. Like he feels like an older player, maybe because of the way he you know he's quick. He's not super fast, but he's pretty elusive. I would only be maybe concerned about he's a two-time 300 carry guy. He has a lot of tread in his tires. He has gotten injured in the past in his career. That's the only worry I may have. And how much do they want to sprinkle in Marshawn Lloyd, who they drafted out of USC a few years ago? And even though, we'll talk about the wide receiver, but even Savion Williams, actually, he's a hybrid wide receiver running back. He caught 63 passes last year, and he actually ran for 51 rushes the year before at TCU. So I'll be interested to see how they sprinkle him in to spell Josh Jacobs a little bit. But for me, he's you know top 10 running back, no questions asked. I will take him 100 times out of 100 over Jonathan Taylor, over Kyron Williams, over Brees Hall. Those are the guys he's going after. And I'd probably even be likely to take him over a Chase Brown. Bucky Irving, your boy, that's where maybe the buck stops, no pun intended there. But I love Josh Jacobs, and I think he's bound for another really, really good season.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer for me too. I think you snaked him from me last year. You picked him right before I was gonna pick. And I think what ended up happening is I ended up taking Anthony Richardson to stack my QBs, and we know how that song and dance ended. I ended up dropping Anthony Richardson, and you ended
And I
up
picked him
picking
up.
him up. So it came full
He got me
circle
to the
moment.
finals.
Yeah, he did.
I don't get to the finals without Anthony Richardson, as crazy as that sound,
Yeah,
and I know it sounds
came
crazy,
full
but
circle moment on that one. But yeah, locked and loaded. I would say Josh Jacobs definitely outperforms his on running back nine current position. And then we move on to a very crowded wide receiver room, but it's not something that everyone's kind of licking their chops about. We did mention that Christian Watson obviously is going to be out for the year. They have Jaden Reed, who, in my eyes, had a disappointing season after starting pretty strong last season. You also have Romeo Dobbs, wide receiver 62, Dontavius Wicks, 79. Remember, he was the season winner, or what did you
let's
say?
not talk about it.
The what did we name it? What did we say
League
that?
winner.
League winner,
Let's
excuse me.
not talk
League
about
winner
Dontavian Wicks.
Dontavius Wicks, and everyone laughed at me for throwing shade on that. Then they obviously drafted Matthew Golden. He's currently going as wide receiver 52, and Savion Williams, wide receiver 119. So right now, off the like, I'm still hearing murmurs of Dobbs potentially being traded to Pittsburgh, actually to rejoin Aaron Rodgers. It seems there's a big cluster in here, right? Like between Jaden Reed 44, then Golden 52, Dobbs 62. Like, talk to me, Raj. What do we make of this wide receiver room?
Avoid, avoid, avoid. If there's someone to own, I'd take a shot on Matthew Golden because he's a 3-level wide receiver. He can win inside. He can win short, intermediate, and deep. Really good player out of Texas. I think he finished with about 60 receptions, 960 yards, and about almost 10 touchdowns at Texas. So, and you said it, the Packers almost rarely ever draft wide receivers,
In the
and we
first
weren't
round, yeah.
sure in the first round, yeah. And we weren't sure if they were going to do this during the draft period. And the fact that they did it, it tells you everything you need to know about their wide receiver room. I think Jaden Reed is still good. I think he's still a reliable player. Wide receiver stats, he could catch about 50 to 70 balls. He's going to rush about 25 to 40 times. If he goes back to his 2023 season where I think he almost finished in the top 30, you can have a potentially really good WR2, but it's hard to rely on him. It's hard to rely on anyone on this team. I would take a flyer on Matthew Golan as the if you're going to own one person, I would own him just for the simple fact that he's a first rounder and they already had a pretty quote unquote stacked wide receiver room. Not stacked by stats, but just stacked by guys who do the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like we just kind of we always I think we always came back to that and always that's how we always alluded to all of this is they're all kind of the same thing and it's just not working, right? Like
No.
I remember, they drafted Dobbs to be that, X receiver. It's just not looking that way. And like I said, last year was a lot of injuries with the wide receivers, but yeah, for sure. If I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it the same way you are. Like there's no way I would go Reed at 44. I'd rather wait for Matthew Golden at 52
Well,
because even in that range, when you're going into like that 44 and 52 wide receiver, like you've already got your in our league, we start three. So you've already got your top three guys most likely when you're about to draft these guys. So if you're looking to draft someone in your flex, I'd rather take a shot at Matthew Golden and I'm sure they'll probably unleash him as the X guy. So
and if you think of where Reed is going, we talked about Debo Samuel last week in the NFC East show. I like Debo Samuel at 43 a lot with Jaden Daniels. Josh Downs, who I love, I like Josh Downs at 42 over Jaden Reed. Again, around that area. Even Cooper Cup is going ranked number 46. So it'll be interesting. They need to just figure out who are their top 2 or 3 wide receivers and set it and figure it out versus trying to mix and match the entire way, which they did last year. And it didn't work.
no, definitely did not work. And then we get to the tight end on the roster, which is obviously locked and loaded as Tucker Craft, tight end number 10. Anything? Is he kind of placed where he should be, or like I feel like there's some options even after him that I would probably wait for in terms of fantasy.
So I think when they drafted both of them, I think everyone thought Musgrave was going to be the guy.
Yeah,
And then Musgrave actually had a good year. And then I think it was last year, everyone was looking at Musgrave over Kraft. Kraft ended up having kind of solidifying himself. I'm not drafting a Green Bay tight end. Similar to what we talked about the wide receivers, the tight end aspect is just the Packers never really focused on the tight end as the main threat. They've always sprinkled in a ton of different tight ends. If you look at their entire history, Bubba Franks, Jermichael Finley, Jimmy Graham, Tunyon, every other year it's like a different tight end that becomes the guy. And I don't want to take that risk this year that maybe they go back to Tucker Craft or even they find someone else that they like. So I think they're two good players, two talented players, but I don't want anything to do with their tight ends.
yeah. I don't know. For me, like I said, it seems a bit steep at tight end number 10. I think there's some better players you could probably get a little bit later on, and I think you made a great point on. There's always a different tight end year in year out, or a few years. There's always a turn. So yeah, definitely for me as well, a position to avoid. So um, yeah, I'm excited to see what that wide receiver depth chart looks like coming out of camp. But we'll see. That'll do it for the Green Bay Packers. We will move ahead to the Chicago Bears, who finished last year at 5-12 after drafting Caleb Williams first overall. They ranked last in the NFL in total yards per game at 283. That's tough, and allowed a league high 68 sacks, which no bueno when you've got a rookie trying to learn out there. Um, so we did say they made some big additions, which one of them was Ben Johnson, snagging him away from the Lions. Pretty cool that they were able to get him in the division. He is now the new head coach. They also added a few offensive linemen in Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, and Drew Dahlman. So obviously they knew they had to shore up the sacks and keep Caleb Williams upright. So I think they did that. And then they got Williams a few more toys to play with in Colston Loveland at tight end, 10th overall, and also Luther Burden the third out of Iowa, right? I believe
Missouri.
Missouri. Excuse me. Um, So we'll start off with Mister I paint my nails, Caleb Williams, currently going as QB 12. Um, Zero rushing TDs in 2024, but had 10 plus per year at USC. So that was kind of a little change. I know again, grain of salt with training camps, but apparently has not been looking too well in Ben Johnson's offense, and he's letting him hear it as well. So, um, what do you think about Caleb Williams this year, Raj? Is it kind of one of those? I don't know if I'm going to go as far as make or break, but if you're the one overall pick, like year two, you got to figure it out.
It's somewhat make or break because Ben Johnson didn't draft him, right? So he's not tied to him 100%. I feel the Caleb story last year was like a tale of four quarters. There was the Carolina Jacksonville game where he had 24 and 29 fantasy points, and then he was awful the next three games. And then against Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, 16, 27, 26 points. Awful for five out of the last six games. He brought it back together against Detroit in a close game, which I think they almost won. So there was definitely signs. I think the expectation was so high for him, but people had to remember that he was still a rookie QB. And if you look at everything he dealt with, the Shane Waldron, the Thomas Brown, Matt Eberflus, the Hail Mary, DJ Moore having bad body language, DeAndre Swift not being a very good running back, he made out pretty well. 68 sacks, right? And they shore up the offensive line. They bring in Ben Johnson. He's going to need to learn how to play quicker. He's going to have to be way more accurate, especially on the deep ball, which was his strength. He just has to avoid sacks. If he does those three things, which are pretty important, but if he does those three things, the QB 12 is very much in reach. He has the talent around him to do it. I am willing to take a gamble on him. When I'm doing my mock drafts, I'm willing to take a gamble on him because of the talent, because I really like him. And we saw what Jared Goff was able to do in a Ben Johnson type offense.
I like the Jared Goff comparison there. Um, if memory serves me right, though, a lot of those sacks were his fault and not just on the O line, right? Like failure to throw it away, and trying to play schoolyard ball and always trying to make a play. I think he's going to have to learn in the NFL. That's just not always possible. You're going to have to throw the ball away. That's obvious. That's a better play than taking a sack, fumbling the ball, trying to do too much. You always have to go and think there's a next play, there's a next play, there's a next play, there's 60 minutes of football to be played. So I think definitely his rookie year was definite learning curve, but I definitely agree that he deserves a shot. 12 seems high. 12 seems
It
still a
it,
little
it
bit.
does.
It seems a bit high for
It does.
for Williams. I'd be probably willing to go 15, 16, but I think 12 seems a bit too risky for me before I see it type deal, right? Like I said, you hear the struggles in camp. He's not getting it. He's not getting the offense. Maybe he's going to need a couple years under Ben Johnson to, figure it out and look better. But realistically, he should definitely look better than he did in his rookie season, especially with that offensive line shirt up. So I'm willing to go as far as maybe 15, 16 in terms of ranking, because I think he is probably, a top half kind of QB in the league.
Well, that's where Goff would be. That's where Drake May would be. And you mentioned the 10 touchdowns that he had pre at USC. He was running quite a bit more towards the end of the year. And he still finished with 81 attempts for almost 500 yards. Like he looked good, and he looked good when he was able to run the ball, and he had escapability. So the last thing I'll say about the sacks, I think it was there was a stat about it, and it's probably about 50% of the sacks were his fault, 50% were the offensive line's fault. But they didn't do him any favors in terms of helping him play quick. Like you saw with Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury, he called plays which were hike the ball, know where your primary read is immediately, throw it immediately. You have to build your offense rookie QB so that you give them easy reads immediately. And they didn't do that. It was too many 5-7 step drops. Heave it up to DJ Moore, heave it up to Roma Dunze. You're perpetuating what the guy likes to do, but what he shouldn't be doing in the NFL. So
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. We'll move here to the running back. So we obviously have DeAndre Swift, second year with the Bears, going as RB21. Career high in carries last year, actually, 253. But I think that was kind of to be expected as they don't really have much behind him. There's still
yeah,
kind of Roshan Johnson who's kind of lurking there. There was big praise for him, but I think like he's your backup. He's your second or third string. I don't think there's anything more on the bone there. But um, interesting tidbit to take a look to keep an eye on is Swift is now reunited with Ben Johnson, who was his OC back in Detroit, and we know that DeAndre Swift had great years in Detroit. Um, what are you seeing here? Are they going to use him, let's say, quote unquote, properly and play to his strengths, or how do you see this going with Ben Johnson now there?
this is tough. Swift, in theory, looks like he could be a fantastic player, but he's so frustrating because he is trying to bounce everything to the outside. He doesn't take the holes that are given to him. And then they don't necessarily have the Damon Montgomery that when they had David Montgomery, but then they let him go to the Lions. I don't think Roshan Johnson is that. Um, it's tough. He's a talented player, but and even when he played with Ben Johnson, which I think it was just 1 year, 99 carries, 542 yards, 5.5 yards per attempt. So that was really good. 48 catches. So in a PPR, he's really solid. There's no competition there. So I think if
Zero.
you luck into him, he'll fall ass backwards to being an RB2 for you. The issue with Swift is I just feel there's always an opportunity for him getting benched. And that happened in Detroit. That definitely happened last year with Chicago. Kind of happened with Philly, although Philly didn't really have any other options. If he doesn't run the way that the coaching staff wants him to run, which is take the holes and not just bounce everything outside, he could just be benched, and that would be my risk. That would be the risky aspect about Swift with the Bears.
Yeah, currently on that cusp of RB2 territory right now is where he's being drafted. RB21 seems a bit high for me as
Don't like it.
well. I really don't like it. Probably
Don't
closer
like
to
it.
the wide, running back 30 for me. I would have to say. Um, yeah, look, I don't know. I think his prime days are behind him, and as you mentioned, they don't really have much else, so they're just going to trot him out there. And the fact that, like you said, he doesn't hit the hole, he always tries to go out wide. Defensive coordinators know that, so yeah, not definitely not a player that I'm targeting from Chicago. But when we move along to the wide receivers, then it gets a little bit more interesting. You've got DJ Moore going as wide receiver 19, Romo Dunze in his sophomore season going as wide receiver 36, and Luther Burden, as we mentioned, drafted this year going as wide receiver 55. What do we see here? I know that there's been a lot of bashing on the DJ Moore, so want to hear your thoughts here. I don't know. I don't know about this wide receiver 19, but I have a feeling you're not going to like it.
Guy, if anyone who listens to this show knows I'm fan number one of the DJ Moore fan club. I love me some DJ Moore, but the body language last year was so bad. I don't know if he was buddies with Justin Fields. I don't know if he was annoyed with the offense. I don't know if he was annoyed with Caleb Williams, but they did not play in sync last year. He somehow still found a way to post over 240 fantasy points last year, despite a down year, despite how up and down Caleb was. So just look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's all I'll say. Look at how they used Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look at that skill set.
Wow, good comparison.
That's all I'll say. If Caleb hits and Ben Johnson uses DJ Moore like they use Amon-Ra St. Brown, this could be a career year.
Wow, did not look at it that way. That's actually very interesting. Very, very interesting. And what about the supporting cast? Romo Dunze, do you think you have a big jump in year two? Does Luther Burden kind of carve out a piece?
But it's crazy because even Rome, like a lanky deep threat who runs 4-4, he's not as fast as JMO, but you could also kind of see the path forward in, does he become a 60 catch, 900-yard guy, throwing catching deep bombs from Caleb? Again, all this is in theory,
Yeah, it's got to
right?
click, right? Like it's
It's
all got
all
to
in
go.
theory.
It's
It's
all got
got to
to.
click, but you
It's
could see the patterns in terms of if you factor in Ben Johnson offense, what he did in Detroit. Same player type in DJ Moore and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Tough guys who could catch the ball, run after it a little bit. Same size. Same thing with Roma Dunze, who again was picked he was a first rounder last year, ninth overall in 2024, right? So he has pedigree. Had a fantastic college career. They believe in him enough that they were able to let go of Keenan Allen. And then even the Luther Burden aspect of it, I think he's a little bit of insurance depending on what happens with DJ Moore. If for some reason there's a fallout there and the chemistry is bad within him and Caleb, which I don't think will be the case. But Burden is also more of a yard after catch guy. I don't think he's going to be a factor. I wouldn't make him a factor in fantasy right away just because he's a rookie. And they also have Loveland, which we'll talk about in the tight ends, but I could see a path forward where DJ Moore has a career year and Roman Dunze has a kind of similar type of, you know, high octane, high volatile numbers like Jameson Williams had.
I like that. I like that a lot. Those are very good insight. I think I'm now higher on DJ Moore than I was a few minutes ago. So um,
Because people are going to be down on him for sure.
yeah, yeah. But I mean,
People are just down
wide
on
receiver 19. That's still pretty
it.
decent for someone who's
It
down. That's still wide receiver two territory, right?
but Nak, that's pretty much where he's been the last
Yeah,
that's where he was last year. You always get him on like the WR2 turn, the round 4 to like he always goes around where Mike Evans goes,
yeah. I
where
was high on him last year, and I
yeah,
drafted him high in a lot of leagues.
as did I.
I believe in Bush League, I had him as well. I'm not sure if I traded him, but I know I had him, and
Well,
definitely disappointed last year.
Well, look quickly. Like I like him. Look, you want to talk about trading camp videos? Like, there's a ton of crap going around Marvin Harrison Jr. I like him way more than Marvin Harrison Jr. It's also because I don't trust Kyler. DK Metcalf, I won't touch it because I don't want to get into a Pittsburgh Steelers discussion with you right now. But even Cortland Sutton, Rasheed Rice, perpetual WR2, Devontae Smith. Like I think DJ Moore could still have a really good year.
Agreed. Now, quickly, we'll touch on the tight ends. So they did draft Colston Loveland with the 10th overall pick. Some people surprised some people as guy at Penn State. I'm drawing a blank. Who was the
Michigan. He went to Michigan.
no, no, no. Who's the tight end that was supposed to go before him from Penn
Oh,
State?
Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren. So they turned heads, and Tyler Warren didn't come off the board. But then you've got, you've okay, they drafted him. You still have Cole Kmet, who's still on the roster, who's kind of, I know you're not too high on Cole Kmet. You were at one point, but
Yes, I was.
not so much anymore. But then, like we just mentioned, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. What are we looking at in terms of tight end? Loveland is going right now, tight end 17.
A lot of mouths to feed. It's a similar situation as the Packers. The only solace I will say I'll take into that is I believe under Ben Johnson, Detroit was a top 10 team in terms of one running back and two tight end sets. So I think both players will be on the field quite a bit. But I don't know if Colson Loveland is of the Brock Bowers mold where he's going to take the league by storm as of year one. I think he's a good player. I think he's a solid player, but there just wasn't enough opportunities for him to catch the ball at Michigan because Michigan just doesn't throw the ball
Bring down,
enough.
yeah.
I think his season high in catches was like probably 30 or 40 catches, right? So um, I think there are good value picks at tight end if you're someone like me who doesn't want to pick a tight end high and you're willing to just kind of stream tight ends and take a flyer on either Loveland or Komet. But I still think both will be involved quite heavily.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is this is your classic streaming tight end type deal? Like, there's no way Colston Loveland becomes a Colston, excuse me, becomes a set it and forget it type of tight end. Obviously, neither does Cole Komet. And if we're comparing him, like you said, to Brock Bowers was that offense. So maybe he does better in an offense where they wouldn't have all these weapons around him. But I think, like, yeah, too many mouths to feed. So I think tight end 17 is pretty perfectly put, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
That'll do it for the Chicago Bears. And last but not least, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who have made a QB change. They were eighth in passing yards per game last year with Sam Darnold and 19 in rushing yards per game. So, as I mentioned, JJ McCarthy will take over this year. They did acquire a Jordan Mason via trade, which I know all three of us, Fab included, liked this trade, especially with the Aaron Jones that's there. Um, Drafted Tay Felton at wide receiver and Donovan Jackson as a guard. So we'll dive in quickly to the position groups. As we mentioned, it's JJ McCarthy's turn. Rookie year was cut short from ACL injury in camp or in a preseason game. So he missed all of the year. Only had 713 total pass attempts post high school. This is a telling stat. We know what when we don't get reps, what it looks like or what it translates to in the NFL. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on fellow Michigan boy, JJ McCarthy.
2 year starter. Like it's look, we talk about Trey Lance, talk about Anthony Richardson. They started even less than that, but 2 year starter is JJ McCarthy. Was not tasked to have to throw the ball very much in his career. If you look at his 2 years there, the national title game, I'm looking at his game log now. He had 2 games where he threw 30 or more passes
Yeah,
in
that's
college in his
crazy.
in his
2 year career.
national championship winning season. So I have no interest in having JJ McCarthy as a into QB as a QB1 or QB2.
Why is he going QB 20?
The
Sorry to
offensive
cut you
supporting
off, but
cast. No, it's okay. The offensive supporting cast. What was able to be done with like Justin Jefferson can sustain Kirk Cousins, who you know Kirk Cousins is a very good QB, but he has flaws. And then we saw what they were able to do with Sam Darnold last year.
and Mullins when he came
And
in,
Nick Mull,
and
Greg
Josh
Nick
Dobbs,
the Dobbs, the was it the Pastronaut they called him?
the Pastronaut,
The
yeah.
Pastronaut. Like Kevin O'Connell is an absolute genius. So I can give the rankers a benefit of the doubt. I could give the people who are drafting him that high the benefit of the doubt. I do not want JJ McCarthy as anything more personally than a QB3, but even more so a QB4 personally. I would rather have. Actually, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say what I'd rather have because we have a lot of Bush League Huddle guys who draft this, who listen to this pod, but I do not want JJ McCarthy. I will just say that.
Yeah, no, no. Look, for me, I agree. I don't know where the hype comes from. As I mentioned, 713 total pass attempts post high school, and you brought up some two names that I would have said the exact same thing in Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson. How has that gone for them? Trey Lance is on team number 3, and Richardson has not figured it out 2 years in. going into year 3 and might lose his starting job to Daniel Jones. So I think that tells you enough right there. JJ McCarthy's got to show me. You want to take a chance on him? Go ahead. If he becomes rookie of the year, fantastic. Joke will be on me, but um, there's a pretty higher chance that it does not happen, and he definitely finishes lower in terms of QB outlook. So
That's QB 20 is nuts. Like
that's
he's
high, man.
Tua,
That's
Matthew Stafford, Bryce Young, Penix, Geno Smith are going after him.
that's
That is people
blasphemy.
giving KOC a ton of credit.
Well, look, like you said, supporting cast obviously has lots to do with it, but I mean, man, this is a guy who's still technically a rookie. Like he didn't play
Yeah.
a snap last year, so I don't know. For me, hey, if O'Connell turns him into a superstar in year 1, like I said, fantastic, and I'm all for seeing it happen. But definitely won't be on my fantasy team. So we let's dive into the running backs here. Aaron Jones had a pretty good year last season. I know he a little banged up, but that's to be expected with Aaron Jones. Currently going as running back 23. And then they added Jordan Mason, who showed he's going RB 40. Definitely showed what he can do in the absence of CMC and in the backup role. 3 games over 100 yards, 5.1 yards per carry in the 5 starts. Obviously, before he went down for injury. So, Raj, I ask you: are you willing to go and pick Aaron Jones high at running back 23, or would you rather wait and take his backup Jordan Mason at running back 40?
Aaron Jones hasn't had more than 9 touchdowns in the season since 2020. So after 2020, he's had touchdown seasons, rushing touchdown seasons of 4, 2, 2, and 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're picking Jordan Mason to potentially be kind of a red zone goal line back,
Interesting.
which I hate those types of. I don't mind backs that are in a timeshare, but I do not want to side with the back that gets pulled out in the 20, in the 10, or near the goal line. And there's always the injury risk of Aaron Jones. And Fab loves this guy to death. Like he is such an Aaron Jones mark. And I love his talent too. He's really fun to watch. But I have a lot of reservations of taking him unless he's a flex for me. I don't want him if he's an RB. Definitely not an RB1 if you're going like a zero running back strategy, which I could see you doing, Knack. But like RB2 or RB3, it's I'd rather have like a Tony Pollard or Caleb Johnson, maybe even RJ Harvey.
So is this a backfield to avoid in your eyes?
That's the thing. I don't want to say it's a backfield to avoid because I think as a whole, I think they're going to do really well. That's a good offensive line. The left tackle who was injured last year, Darisaw, I think he tore his ACL. He should be back because it happened relatively early. And again, it's a very good offensive line, very good offense. And I think because of McCarthy, I see them actually relying more on the run, maybe not wanting to
Mm,
put as much stress on McCarthy.
which would be smart.
So I think as a conglomerate, as a grouping, I think it's a really good backfield stats wise. I feel like I'll struggle on a weekly basis. Like who will be the guy? And I think Aaron Jones is going to be the guy to get you, into opponent territory or into the red zone. And I think they're going to want to use Jordan Mason. Do you remember what they gave up for him?
No, I'm not sure. I it couldn't have been that high of a pick if I under, I think it was like a fifth or a sixth round pick.
Yeah, you're
Would it
right.
be?
Yeah. Pick swap and future six.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't anything high. Obviously, with Mason injured and was a backup, he wasn't going to get the biggest return. But I like the way you put it, and yeah, I do agree with the fact that Jones might get spelled, definitely when they're closer to the goal line. So it's going to be tough to gauge this running back situation. So something definitely to monitor. And then we go into the wide receivers, which need no introduction. Obviously, you have Justin Jefferson going as a wide receiver 2, and then Jordan Addison, wide receiver 37. There is a possible suspension coming for Jordan Addison. I know he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, but likely 3 to 4 game suspension coming up. And as we mentioned, Ty Felton as a rookie, drafted a rookie. So uh, I know we had our reservations with JJ McCarthy, but do Justin Jefferson and Addison still eat, or is it kind of take a few pegs back this season?
Justin Jefferson, JJ is bulletproof, but what concerns me more is the hamstring strain from last week. And they're holding him out, or they're kind of taking it easy with him. Hamstring strains always scare the hell out of me. If you think of Christian McCaffrey last year. So I will be really interested to see, which maybe not necessarily in our, because I'm very much in play in Bush League for Justin Jefferson at the 4th overall pick. I'd be interested to see in some other leagues, more traditional ones where it's not 2 QB, where wide receivers, running backs go in the first few picks. If people are that weary of Justin Jefferson and passing him up to go with with CD Lamb or even Puka Nakua. If he's healthy though, like locked and loaded WR2, WR3 at most, right? He's Chase is the unquestioned number one, but Justin Jefferson is for sure at least WR3. So just the injuries concerning. I think Addison is always
Had a good season.
he had a good season. I want to look at his game log, but I feel like his game log is always really good games and then some duds afterwards. Didn't he have a massive 3 touchdown game against the Packers?
I think he definitely had one of those last year.
Yeah, I think he's a really talented player, but if I look at his game log now, 8 catches, 162 yards against the Bears. Um, 8 catches, 133 yards against the Falcons. And then he had just a lot of games sprinkled in there. 3 catches, 3 catches, 3 catches, 2 catches, 2 catches, 3 catches. So the ride is not great with Addison. He will win you weeks, and then there'll be weeks where you're expecting more out of him from a WR 2-3 ish position.
See, and this is where when we did our AFC North show is when I had reservations about T Higgins and why he's being drafted so high and why the wide receiver one, especially when you have like a top 3 guy in the league, he eats more than anyone, right? And you are going to force feed him the ball. So I think it does play into this situation too. I'm not trying to say that Addison is on Higgins's level, but I'm just trying to say that like if Chase they're going to want to get him the ball all kinds, who's going to suffer in that situation? It's going to be T Higgins, right? In the same situation here, if you have a Justin Jefferson on your team, who's going to suffer and have most likely those games up to 3, 3, 2, 4 catch games? That's going to be the second wide receiver on the squad. So I think I agree with you. I like him as a player, but fantasy football wise, when you are putting him in there as a wide receiver 3 and you're expecting some numbers and you're just not getting them week in and week out, it's tough, right?
Well, Knack, if you look at, I think you said what, WR37, Jacoby Myers is the WR1 for the Raiders, and he's going at wide
Give
receiver
me
38.
Myers over Addison every day of the week.
Khalil Shakir is the WR1 for the Bills. I know that they're talking so much about Josh Palmer at camp, like for the Bills,
Yeah, but
but like I don't buy it. Shakir is the guy. Juwan Jennings is the guy right now.
where's he
With
going?
sorry, he's going WR40.
Yeah, I see. Like that's crazy. And with and probably he's probably going 37 with the looming suspension. So he would probably be going even higher
I
technically.
think like Addison, like he feels like a bit of a name-ish brand too. Like
Yeah.
he had a lot of he won the Blitnikoff, like the top wide receiver award in college, and he was drafted in the first round, so he kind of has a little bit of a name brand to him, where people kind of just assume that he could be a WR2. And again, we're not talking about the player here, but I love your point about how the top dog wide receivers just consume so much. It'll actually be it'll be interesting what happens, and we'll get to it in the NFC West show when we do it. But like, what will happen with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua? To your point, how are they gonna mix and match that WR1
Yeah,
WR1A pairing? It's similar to what you're saying,
yeah,
but
it's a great question.
um, Addison, I think it's still a bit rich for me.
Yep, definitely agree. And if we finish it off with the tight end position, I know Hawkinson missed most of 2024, still going as tight end number 4 this year. How are we feeling about this? Are we liking Hawkinson again, especially with JJ McCarthy and with that bona fide superstar wide receiver on the team?
Yeah, I think this makes sense. If you look at his 2023 season, 95 catches, 960 yards, 5 TDs. That would, I'm looking up now, but that would probably place him around tight end. That's tight end 4 numbers, right? So they're basically just extrapolating his 2023 season, assuming he's healthy now. I think that makes a lot of sense for him. And Hawkinson has been a really consistent player since he's been in the league. Whether it's with the Lion, even with the Lions, he's typically at the 60, at least 60 to 70 catch mark, and then when he's at his peak, he could get to 80, 90. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Tight end 4 is perfect for him.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's, tight ends are your QB's best friend, especially when they're rookies. They try to find
Yeah,
those easy passes and easy completions as well to move the sticks. So I think he's rated pretty good. I don't know. For me, I was just never a Hawkinson kind of guy. I know there's a lot of injuries with him. There's a lot of up and down with him, but like you said, he definitely is that consistent player. I'm eager to see what he looks like this year. Um, you know, Obviously didn't get to play all that much last season. I think he got back what was like the final game or two of the year and then went into the playoffs. If
he
I'm
still played. He still played 9 games. He started 9 games last year.
Oh wow, okay. I think he did pretty well though last year. He did okay coming off the injury. But I think I'm in maybe the reason why I'm saying is I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I'm not a big draft tight end high kind of guy. Like I never drafted a Travis Kelsey in the second round or last year I got Kittle, but I think I got him in the fifth or sixth round. So it was a bit later and it was one of those things where it's like he's still there. Like I'll grab him.
Exactly.
But yeah, like the top 3 rounds, like you won't see me draft a QB. I mean a tight end unless like 3rd round comes and Brock Bowers is maybe sitting there. Like there's maybe the tight end one at the position, but I feel like everyone else after that, it's like, well, like it's for me. I was never
People
a tight end high kind of guy.
people will take Trey McBride in the top 3 rounds this year. Trey McBride finished tight end 5. He had 111 receptions
Yeah,
and
one
1,100
touchdown.
yards,
I think one touchdown, 2 touchdowns.
two touchdowns.
Yeah, he got that
Tight
one as
ends
well.
are just not the primary benefactor of touchdowns in the offense. That will go to wide receivers almost all the time, right? So even if you take up Brock Bowers, like he's finishing with last year 112 receptions, 1,200 yards, only 5 TDs. That's like 150 yards, 100 and maybe 167, 70 yards in PPR, but it's yeah, you gotta, or no, 262 yards in PPR. So it is quite a bit, right? But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of taking tight ends that early.
Well, guys, that will wrap up the NFC North. Thank you so much once again for listening. As always, please like, subscribe, and follow us on all the social media platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Amazon, really anywhere. And we will be back next week, hopefully with our co-host Fab back in the fold. We miss you, Fab. So hopefully
Maybe
have him back next week. And we will be doing which division are we doing next week? What do we
I
want
have
to
no
do
clue.
next week? Let's go back. Let's go.
Actually,
Let's
here
jump
it
to the
says
AFC. Let's go AFC
AFC
next week.
South.
Let's do
AFC South
AFC
next week.
South. Here we go. That should definitely be an interesting one. Well, that'll do it for us this week. Once again, thanks again for listening. And Raj, cue the music. Oh, by the way, we have football tomorrow.
Oh,
Hall
we
of Fame
do.
game.
Hall
Hall
of
of
Fame
Fame
game. Trey
game
Lance
tomorrow.
starting.
Trey Lance. We mentioned him on the pod today. Trey Lance starting. But I'm curious to see like Hampton and Trey Harris. We'll see how that goes. But
Quentin Johnson dropping passes again.
goodbye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.